Sometimes I wonder if my father ever really saw me as his daughter, or just an investment, a safety net he could cash in when things got tough. If I had known what would happen, would I still have helped him? Maybe. Maybe not. But I do know one thing. I'll never let someone use me like that again. Growing up, my father, Henry Calloway, was larger than life. A self-made businessman, the proud owner of Calloway and Sons Manufacturing, a company that had been in our family for 3 generations. It was his pride and joy, more than his wife, more than his children, more than me. I learned young that love in our family wasn't unconditional. My father believed in one thing: results. You earn your place or you don't have one. My older brother, Damien, was the golden child, groomed to take over the company since birth. I was the backup plan, the one who had to be self-sufficient because business isn't a place for emotions. I remember being 10, sitting at the dinner table, listening to my father talk about how Damien was going to be the next great leader. I had piped up, eager to be included. "What about me, Dad?" He had chuckled, ruffling my hair absent-mindedly. "Sweetheart, you'll do just fine on your own. Women don't need to run companies. They marry into them." I had laughed along with everyone else, pretending the words didn't sting. By the time I was old enough to prove him wrong, I had no interest in Calloway and Sons. I built my own path, went to college on a scholarship, and carved out a career in financial consulting. And while my father barely acknowledged my success, Damien had it worse. He tried to live up to expectations, but the truth was he was reckless with money, and even worse with leadership. Calloway and Sons had been bleeding for years, but my father refused to see it, until it was too late. The call came on a cold December morning. "Daisy, we need to talk," my father said, his voice taut. No pleasantries, no, "How are you?" Just straight to business. "Come by the house, tonight." When I arrived, my father was already seated at the dining table, a folder full of documents spread in front of him. My mother sat silently beside him. Worry lines creased deep into her face. Damien was there too, swirling a glass of whiskey, his knee bouncing nervously. My father steepled his fingers, watching me. "The company is in trouble." I didn't say anything. I had suspected it for years. "I need your help," he continued. "You work in finance. You know how to fix things like this." I glanced at the papers, scanning the figures. Debt, declining revenue, mismanaged funds. It was worse than I expected. "How much do you need?" I asked, my voice even. He looked me in the eye. $2 million. I nearly laughed. $2 million? Dad, I don't have that kind of money. His jaw tightened. "But you have connections, investors, ways to restructure debt." So that was it. He didn't just want help. He wanted me to pull strings, risk my reputation, put my own finances on the line for a company that had never been mine, for a father who had never truly supported me. I should have said no, walked away. But despite everything, some small part of me wanted to prove my worth, to show him I wasn't just fine on my own. I was indispensable. So I agreed. Over the next 6 months, I threw myself into fixing Calloway and Sons. I brought in financial experts, negotiated with creditors, and convinced investors to give them another chance. I poured my time, my expertise, my resources into salvaging a company I had no stake in. And slowly it worked. The company stabilized, and by the end of the year, it was no longer on the brink of collapse. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I received an email from my father's lawyer. A revised will. I stared at the words, my stomach sinking. My father had rewritten his will to leave everything, to Damien. Not a single mention of me. I read it again. Sure, I had misunderstood. After everything I had done, he had still chosen Damien. He had still chosen to see me as nothing more than an outsider. I confronted him that same evening. I stormed into his study, throwing the papers onto his desk. "Explain this." He barely looked up. "It's how it should be." I clenched my fists. I saved your company, Dad. I put my name on the line. And you're telling me that doesn't matter? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Daisy, you'll be fine. You always are. But Damien, he needs this. He's the future of this company. I exhaled sharply, nodding to myself. All right, I said. Then let Damien figure it out from now on. And just like that, I walked out. I cut the money flow, severed ties, and for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to win his approval. A week later, my phone rang. I answered, expecting some sort of reconciliation. Instead, I was greeted with a sharp, impatient voice. Where the hell is my money? No hello, no thank you, no remorse. I smiled bitterly, gripping the phone tight. No hello, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Silence. Then he scoffed. Don't be dramatic, Daisy. You have an obligation to this family. I felt something inside me snap. An obligation? After being treated like I was expendable my entire life? I took a deep breath. No, Dad, I said calmly. I don't. And then I hung up. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding in my chest. He was going to call back. He was going to send a message. He was going to realize what he had done and apologize. Any second now. The screen stayed dark. The silence stretched, filling the space around me like a heavy fog. For the first time in my life, my father needed something from me that I wasn't willing to give. And instead of apologizing, instead of trying to fix what he had broken, he had responded with entitlement. I had been a tool, not a daughter. And now that I refused to be used, he was furious. A slow, bitter laugh escaped my lips. I shouldn't have been surprised. And yet, some naive part of me had hoped that this time would be different. That night, I didn't sleep. Every few hours, I'd pick up my phone, half expecting another call. But my father was stubborn. If I wasn't going to cave immediately, he would wait. Let me stew in my own guilt before making his next move. I wasn't going to fall for it. The next morning, I walked into my office, my assistant immediately sensing something was off. Everything okay, Daisy? She asked hesitantly. I forced a smile. Yeah, just dealing with some family stuff. She nodded, but I could see the concern in her eyes. I had always been the one with the answers. The fixer, the dependable one. But for the first time, I wasn't fixing anything. I was letting it burn. By the end of the week, the emails started. At first, they were civil. From Henry Calloway. Subject, let's be reasonable. Daisy, I understand you're upset. But family is family. We don't turn our backs on each other. Call me. I deleted it. 2 days later, another one. From Henry Calloway subject. This is bigger than you. You're being short-sighted. You built your career in finance. You, of all people, should know that Calloway & Sons is a long-term investment. You helped save it. Why throw that away? Damien is struggling to handle things on his own. Come fix this before it's too late. Damien is struggling. Of course he was. I had seen it coming years ago. And yet, my father still thought I was the problem. This time, I responded. From Daisy Calloway. Subject. This is bigger than you. It's not my responsibility to clean up Damien's messes. It never was. I hit send before I could overthink it. A week later, my father showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant hesitantly knocked on the conference room door. Miss Calloway, your father is here. Every head in the room turned toward me. I kept my expression blank. Tell him I'm busy. He says it's urgent. Of course he did. Everything was urgent when it was about what he needed. I sighed, standing up. Give me 5 minutes. As I stepped out into the waiting area, I saw him pacing by the windows. He looked different, less put together than usual. His suit was still pressed, but the tie was loosened, and his hair, always carefully styled, looked slightly disheveled. He turned when he heard my heels click against the marble floor. Daisy, he started, forcing a smile. Good to see you. I crossed my arms. Is it? He exhaled through his nose, clearly trying to maintain patience. I didn't come here to fight. No? I tilted my head. You storm into my office unannounced after I've ignored all your emails, but you don't want to fight? He clenched his jaw. I just want to talk. I sighed. Fine, talk. He hesitated, as if this conversation wasn't going the way he had rehearsed it. Then, finally, he got to the point. The company is still in trouble. The investors are getting antsy. Damien is overwhelmed. I arched a brow. And? He looked at me like I was speaking another language. And we need you back. We. As if I was still part of this. As if I hadn't been erased from the will, pushed aside the moment my usefulness had expired. I let out a breathy chuckle. No. His expression hardened. No? That's right. Number his lips pressed into a thin line. Daisy, this isn't just about you. If the company collapses, it won't just be us who suffer. There are employees, families who depend on Calloway and Sons for their livelihoods. Are you really going to be this selfish? There it was. The guilt trip. The same tactic he had used my entire life. The same manipulation I had fallen for time and time again. But this time, it didn't work. I met his gaze, my voice steady. I already saved it once. That was my contribution. I owe you nothing. His face darkened. That company was built for Damien. You knew that. You always knew that. And yet he had still come crawling to me when Damien had failed. I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Then let Damien handle it. I turned on my heel, walking away. Daisy, I glanced over my shoulder. This conversation is over, Dad. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. I expected the next move to come quickly. My father never took no for an answer, and I had given it to him in the firmest way possible. But days passed. Then a week. Then 2. Silence. At first, I thought maybe he had finally understood. Maybe, for once, he had taken me at my word. I should have known better. Because when the next move came, it wasn't from him. It was from my mother. I was leaving work late, exhaustion pressing against my temples when my phone rang. Mom. I hesitated before answering. Unlike my father, she rarely called. She had always been the quiet observer, the neutral party, the woman who had let things happen rather than making them happen. I swiped to accept the call. Daisy, she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I sighed. Hi, Mom. Are you busy? I just left the office. There was a pause, like she was gathering courage. Can we talk? I leaned against my car, gripping the door handle. I already knew where this was going. Go ahead. She exhaled shakily, and for the first time in years, I thought she might actually be nervous. It's about your father, she said. And Damien. Of course it was. They're struggling, sweetheart. I know you and your father had words, but this isn't just about him. The company is hanging by a thread. Your brother is drowning. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Mom, Please, Daisy. Her voice cracked, and I froze. My mother had always been composed. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. If my father was the storm, she was the still water beneath it. And yet, I could hear the weight in her voice. The desperation. For a brief moment, guilt curled in my stomach. She continued before I could answer. Your father isn't doing well. He's not eating. He barely sleeps. She hesitated. I'm worried about him. I closed my eyes. Classic. My father hadn't called again because he had realized something. I was immune to him. But my mother? He knew I still saw something good in her. He knew I might bend for her, even when I wouldn't bend for him. And so, here she was, playing the part of the worried wife, the mediator, the one who could make things right if I just gave in. But this time, I saw through it. I swallowed back the guilt and steadied my voice. Mom, I love you, but I won't do this. She inhaled sharply. Daisy. No, I said, firmer now. This is the pattern, isn't it? He burns everything to the ground and you clean up the ashes. You beg, you smooth things over, and he gets away with it. Again and again. Silence. I pressed on. I refused to be part of it anymore. I saved that company once. I saved him once, and he repaid me by cutting me out like I never mattered. He made his choice. Her voice was barely a whisper. Daisy, it's not that simple. It is, I said. For once, it is. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel. You want to save him, Mom? Then let Damien do it. That's who he chose. That's who he bet everything on. She exhaled slowly, and I knew she understood. But understanding wasn't the same as acceptance. I just don't want to lose my daughter over this, she said finally. A lump formed in my throat. You won't, I promised. But I won't lose myself over this either. I ended the call before she could say anything else. The next morning, I woke up to a headline. Callaway and Sons. Third-generation business at risk as family dispute unfolds. I blinked, rereading the words. What the hell? I sat up, scrolling through the article. Anonymous sources claimed that internal family conflict was jeopardizing the company's future. That a former family member had walked away at a critical time, leaving the company and its employees in turmoil. And though they never named me, it was obvious who they were talking about. I barely had time to process it before my phone exploded with messages. From an old college friend. Daisy, is this article about you? From a former client. Hope you're okay. Let me know if you need to get ahead of this. From my assistant. Do you want me to start screening calls? I was still staring at my phone when a text popped up from Damien. Damien. You should have just helped, Daisy. Rage flooded my veins. This wasn't just a news leak. This was a calculated attack. A public smear campaign to pressure me into bending. My father had played his last card. And that's when I knew. He had lost. Because I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't the little girl at the dinner table, desperate to be seen. I wasn't the fixer, the safety net, the silent daughter in the shadows. I was done. I typed out a single response to Damien. Me. Tell Dad that if he wants to drag me through the mud, he better be prepared for the consequences. I hit send. I expected the fallout from my text to be immediate. My father was the kind of man who couldn't stomach being challenged, let alone being threatened. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of his wrath. I was ready for it. The next morning, I sat in my office, sipping coffee as I scrolled through the latest financial reports for a client. A sense of eerie calm had settled over me. Then my assistant knocked. She looked hesitant, like she was debating whether or not to even speak. Daisy, your mother is here. I stiffened. My mother never showed up unannounced. I set my coffee down and exhaled slowly. Send her in. A moment later, she stepped inside, looking as though she hadn't slept in days. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she was clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. Mom, I said evenly, this is a surprise. She didn't sit. Instead, she stood in front of my desk, wringing her hands. Daisy, she started, then stopped. Her voice wavered. Your father, he's furious. I almost laughed. When is he not furious? This time is different, she insisted. He's talking to lawyers. He wants to sue you. I blinked. Sue me? I repeated, incredulous. For what? For not giving him my money? Is that illegal now? She swallowed. He thinks you misled the investors, that you sabotaged the company by walking away. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Mom, I didn't sabotage anything. I saved that company. And when I left, everything was stable. The fact that it's collapsing now, that's on Damien. That's on Dad. I know, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. I know that, sweetheart. Then why are you here? I didn't say it out loud. I already knew the answer. She wasn't here because she agreed with my father. She was here because she was scared of him. I need you to make this right, she pleaded. If he goes through with this, it could ruin you. Even if you win, the damage to your reputation. I cut her off. He already tried to ruin me, I said coldly, gesturing toward my phone, where the article about Calloway and Sons was still open. He already dragged my name through the mud. And now that it didn't work, he wants to play legal games? I leaned forward. I won't be bullied, Mom. Not by him. Not by anyone. She sat down then, like her legs had finally given out. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I sighed, rubbing my temples. My mother had always been passive, always standing in my father's shadow, making excuses, keeping the peace. I didn't want to be like her. I refused to be like her. You have two choices, Mom, I said gently. You can keep defending him. Keep throwing yourself between him and reality. Keep letting him walk all over you. I let that sink in before I continued. Or you can walk away, like I did. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know how. And that was the difference between us. I had figured it out. I had broken free. And she never would. I love you, Mom, I said softly, but I won't fix this for him. She looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Then she stood, wiped her tears, and without another word, walked out. The lawsuit never came. It was an empty threat, just like I suspected. But my father wasn't finished. A few days later, I got an alert from my bank. A fraud warning. Someone had tried to access my accounts. I immediately called my bank, my pulse spiking. Miss Calloway, we flagged multiple attempts to access your accounts from an unfamiliar device, the representative explained. We've locked everything down for now, but we recommend you check your security settings. I already knew who it was. My father. I should have been furious, but instead I just felt exhausted. He had no power over me, so he was grasping at anything he could find. I spent the next hour changing every password, setting up extra layers of security, and freezing all access to my financial records. And then, for good measure, I texted Damien. Me. Tell Dad if he ever tries to touch my money again, I will press charges. It took him a full 30 minutes to respond. Damien. I didn't know he would do that. I scoffed. Liar. Me. You did. And you let him. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. Because Damien wasn't the mastermind. He was just a pawn, as he always had been. A week later, I got another call from my mother. But this time, she wasn't begging. She was panicking. Daisy, she gasped, her voice shaking. It's your father. He collapsed. For a moment, the world around me stilled. I gripped my phone. What? They rushed him to the hospital. His heart... Her voice broke. They're not sure if he's going to make it. I swallowed, my throat tight. I should have felt something. Pain, fear, regret. But all I felt was numb, because even now, even with this, I knew what she was really asking. Come home. Come back. Fix it. I exhaled. Keep me updated, I said. Let me know what the doctors say. She let out a shaky breath. Are you coming? I closed my eyes. No, Mom. The moment I hung up, I expected to feel something. Guilt, sadness, even relief. But there was nothing. Just silence. For years, my father had loomed over my life, a force too powerful to ignore. Every decision I made, every sacrifice, every late night spent fixing his mistakes, it had all been to prove myself to a man who never saw me as anything more than a tool. And now? Now he was lying in a hospital bed, and I couldn't bring myself to care the way I thought I should. I wasn't heartless. I was just empty. 3 days passed. 3 days of missed calls from my mother. 3 days of texts from numbers I didn't recognize. 3 days of Damien saying nothing at all. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed again. Mom, he's stable, but weak. The doctor said it was a warning sign. He needs to make major lifestyle changes. Maybe this will be the wake-up call he needs. I stared at the screen. A wake-up call? She still believed in that? That my father, the man who had been manipulating, scheming, and controlling people his entire life, would suddenly change just because his body had finally caught up with his karma? I didn't reply. The next message came later that evening. Mom, he's asking for you. I let out a breath, rubbing my temples. Of course he was. Not because he had changed, not because he was sorry, but because he needed something. I typed back the only answer I could give. No. I didn't expect a response. But after a long pause, the typing bubbles appeared. Mom, I understand. Just think about it, Daisy. I wouldn't. A week later, I saw the news. Callaway & Sons was collapsing. For real this time. The article painted a clear picture. An empire in free fall. Investors pulling out. Employees being let go. Debt piling up. Damien had failed. And my father was too weak to fix it. I expected Damien to call. To beg. To try one last time to pull me back in. But the only message I got from him was a short, bitter text. Damien, you got what you wanted. I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. Me. No, Damien. I got what I deserved. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The morning after Damien's text, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not relief. Not victory. Just peace. For the first time, there were no fires to put out. No urgent calls, no manipulative pleas, no threats looming over me. Callaway & Sons was sinking, but it wasn't my problem. My father was recovering, but I didn't have to be part of it. Damien was dealing with the wreckage, but I felt no obligation to clean up after him. For once, my life was mine alone. 1 week later, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it, but I didn't. Mom, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated. Your father is home. I said nothing. He's different, she added quickly. Quieter. He hasn't said much since he got back from the hospital. I still said nothing. I think he wants to see you, she said, voice uncertain. But he won't ask. I let out a slow breath. And you want to know if I will? Silence. Then, softly, she said, Would you? Would I? Would I walk back into that house, sit in front of the man who had erased me from his legacy, who had only seen me as an asset to be used and discarded? Would I give him one last chance? I closed my eyes. And then I made my final choice. No, Mom, I won't. A shaky breath on the other end. I thought you might say that. I swallowed. Are you going to stay? She didn't answer right away. Then, just above a whisper, she admitted, I don't know how to leave. I pressed my fingers to my temple. Then that's your choice to make, I told her, just like I made mine. I heard her inhale sharply, as if she wanted to say something else, but she didn't. She just whispered, I love you, Daisy. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. I love you too, Mom, I said. Then I hung up, and that was the last time I ever spoke to her. A month later, I stood outside my new home, a place with no history, no painful memories, no ghosts of a childhood spent begging for scraps of affection. It was small, but mine. As I sipped my coffee on the porch, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Whoever it was, my mother, my father, Damien, one of their enablers, they weren't part of my life anymore. I had cut the cord, and I would never go back. With a final glance at the phone, I hit block. And then, smiling to myself, I went back inside. I had won. Not the way they thought winning worked. Through money, power, control, but in the only way that truly mattered. I had my freedom. And nothing. Not my father's empire, not my family's expectations, not the weight of the past, could take that away from me ever again.
My golden child sister called my son a mistake at her baby shower, and I finally lost it after years of tolerating her and ended up telling her about her own story that she had no idea about because I had stayed quiet for my mom's sake. But now that the secrets are finally out, my parents are getting divorced and my sister has cut off the entire family and everyone's blaming me. My sister Melissa, 28 female, and I, 31 female, already never had a very good relationship, and we mostly just attended each other's events and stuff for the sake of appearances. But at her baby shower recently she made a very horrible remark about my son, and I ended up spilling the beans on her, and basically just revealed that she's not even family. This is something that I had known for many years and it finally came out, and now things are going really badly for my family, and they're blaming me for it. I don't think that it's fair for them to do that, especially when they have never stood up for me when they had to. I have become used to her sly jibes and stuff about my marriage for quite some time now, and usually I just ignore it because I know that she's doing it for attention, and I don't want to give her the satisfaction of getting a response out of me. But recently she dragged my son into it, and that was the last straw. For context, I have a 3-year-old son with my husband, but we got married just last year, and I don't think it's as problematic or shameful as she makes it out to be either, because I think we made a good decision since my husband and I had only been together for 6 or 7 months when I conceived my son. We were not ready to get married at the time, so we decided to take it slow, and instead of getting married because I was pregnant, we decided to continue seeing each other and take things at our own pace. Things worked out well because even after I found out about the pregnancy we kept getting to know each other better, and then after my son was born he moved in with us. Then, after having stayed together for quite a while, we decided to get married last year. I don't know how this is any of her concern, but she just likes to make comments about this and makes me out to be some sort of immoral or unethical person just because I had a child out of wedlock, which is such an outdated idea that I don't even feel the need to dignify it with a response. It's not like I couldn't have said anything if I wanted to, because trust me, if she had any idea as to how she became a part of the family, she never would have had the audacity to talk to me that way. But unfortunately I never spoke up about it because I did not want to hurt my mom. I accidentally found out some things a couple of years ago, but by then, my parents were happy and Melissa had already been a part of our family for her entire life, and my mom literally went down on her knees and begged me not to spill the beans on her big secret. So, out of respect for her, I didn't say anything for a very long time, but this time, at the baby shower, I just couldn't hold back anymore. Before getting into Melissa and her thing, I feel like I have to mention what happened at the baby shower. So, once everyone had arrived and we were all talking and stuff, Melissa stood very close to me with a group of her friends and started talking real loud. She was telling them about how she had known her husband for 3 years before she got married to him, and they waited for 2 years before they decided to get pregnant. After explaining the timeline to them, she started telling me that she had planned her future with her husband very carefully because she wanted to make sure that everything was on track and they did not have any surprises. Because the last thing that she wanted was for her first child to be a mistake, since that would really derail her plans and she didn't want to end up like a certain somebody. I guess it's easy to understand why it was the last straw for me, because before this, at least she had the decency to keep her insults very tame, and it was very easy for me to ignore them. But this one was not like that. This time, what she said was very disgusting, and the implication that my son had been a mistake who had derailed my life, I did not like it. Besides, my husband and my son were right there beside me and they had heard everything as well, which really upset me even more. So I just snapped and addressed her directly, and then I told her that she wouldn't be talking so much if she knew about her own story, and then just got into it before my mom could stop me. Very frankly, I wasn't even thinking about how this would reflect on my mom, because for so many years, even though I had kept a secret to myself, she had never stood up for me or told Melissa to cut it out, so I just went ahead full throttle, and that's how everybody found out that Melissa isn't actually my sister, she's my cousin, and my mom adopted her when she was 6 months old. And I don't think that the guests would have found that so scandalous if that was the worst of it, but unfortunately there was more. My aunt being Melissa's real biological mother was still fine, but it was the identity of the father that really had people shocked. Melissa's dad, and a huge part of the reason my mom adopted her, was my mom's ex-boyfriend from high school, and the only man she had dated before she met my dad. The cherry on top was the fact that my mom had basically manipulated my father into adopting Melissa by telling him that her sister was just 22, and she was not ready to take on responsibility of being a mother, so she made it seem like she was doing something very kind, and that's how they ended up adopting Melissa. But the darker truth was that my mom just wanted an excuse to stay in touch with her ex, and up until a couple of years back I know for a fact that she was still in touch with him about this. I don't want to get into the details of it, but basically my mom and her ex broke up after high school, and then in college she met my dad and started dating him, and after graduation she got married to him, but I guess they were never really able to get over each other. And soon enough her ex hooked up with his sister, which, as messy as it is, I don't even know how that ended up happening, but that's none of my business anyway. They were involved with each other for a couple of months, and that's how my aunt ended up pregnant with Melissa, but she wasn't ready for a child, so she requested my mom to adopt a baby. The problem is that my mom pretty much already had her hands full with me because I was 3 at the time, which is pretty young, and she wasn't ready for a second child. So that's when her ex decided to step in. He told her that it was his baby, and he requested her, and then she finally gave in. She somehow convinced my dad to adopt Melissa, and that's how she became a part of the family. Obviously I don't really remember any of this because, like I said, I was just 3 years old back then, so even I had no clue that Melissa was not my biological sister, she had been adopted. We were both raised to believe that we were bio-sisters, and after my aunt passed away in a car accident 3 years after Melissa was born, there was nobody to contradict our parents either, so we grew up believing that she was my sister until my mom accidentally left her phone unlocked a couple of years back, and I ended up reading a few of her messages while she was talking to her ex. Back then I did not know that it was her ex, I just knew that it was some guy asking about Melissa, talking about how much his daughter had grown up and trying to grab lunch with my mom, and also telling her to bring Melissa with her because she believed that it was finally time for her to find out the truth. My mom hadn't replied, but I scrolled up and I saw that she had been in touch with this guy for a while, and I found it very suspicious, so I confronted her about it, and that's how the entire story came out. My dad was obviously aware of the fact that Melissa was his sister-in-law's daughter and not his wife's, but she had been very clever and excluded the fact that it was actually her ex's daughter as well. The two sisters had told my dad that some random guy she had a one-night stand with was actually the father of the baby, and that didn't raise any alarms with my dad, so he was blissfully unaware of everything until I brought it up at the baby shower. This shocked Melissa, and to top it off I decided to taunt her about how she had made an even bigger mistake than my son, so she should probably look into her own life story first. It was intentional, I won't lie, and I knew that it was going to cause a lot of trouble for everyone in my family, but I honestly couldn't care less about it. And right now Melissa is not talking to my parents and has even rescinded their invitation to the wedding. Back when I left the baby shower she looked pretty furious and she was having a hysterical temper tantrum, so this isn't surprising. However, I really didn't see my parents' divorce coming because apparently after the baby shower, my mom and my dad got into a really big fight at the baby shower itself about the whole thing with her ex. Because of course he had no clue about that detail. And for the past couple of years, even after I had found out about it, I hadn't breathed a word of it because my mom had promised me that she had nothing going on with him. She even told me that the only reason she had responded to him recently was because he had been pestering her for months about Melissa and being a parent herself. She didn't think it was right to continue ignoring him. Apart from that, she told me that whatever feelings she had had for him at the beginning of her marriage were gone. And now all she loved and valued was my dad, so for the sake of that, I kept her secret. But now I don't think that I should care because clearly they didn't care about me, which is why they never stood up for me when Melissa was blatantly insulting and humiliating me in public. Part of it is my fault too. I never stood up for myself either, but that's just because I did not want to create any drama and embarrass my family. I knew that at the end of the day, they were going to try and blame me, which is why my mom is going out of her way right now to pin everything on me. She's been sending me text after text telling me that I've ruined everything for her because her daughter isn't speaking to her, and her husband has moved out and is demanding a divorce, all because she tried to do something good for her sister. And she's claiming that my little ego-driven outburst ruined everything. Believe it or not, I do feel a little guilty because it's true that her life is pretty much in shambles right now. And that's just because I lost my temper. Of course, none of my friends or my husband thinks that I did anything wrong, but still, I feel like I need to get a second opinion. ITF for revealing my mom's secrets and ruining her life out of anger? Edit. Guys, I'm not really sure about what exactly went wrong with my mom's relationship, and I also didn't think it was relevant in the context of the story, so I didn't include it. But anyway, this is what she told me. She said that she had to break up with her ex because they couldn't do the whole distance thing, and they were going to different colleges after high school. After she met my dad, she really liked him, but she still had feelings for her ex, so things were a bit complicated. Eventually she chose my dad because she thought that he could provide a more stable lifestyle compared to her ex, who was more on the party animal side of things. And from what my mom told me, it was apparently at some party that her ex bumped into my sister, and they ended up hooking up. Of course she was not happy about it in the beginning, and that's why she was very hesitant to adopt their daughter, but even after she got married, she felt like she still had some lingering feelings for her ex, which is why he was able to convince her to adopt Melissa. But she knew that my dad wouldn't like it if he got to find out about it, so she kept out a secret from him. Now this is whatever my mom had told me when I confronted her about the messages, but you guys can take it with a pinch of salt because things might have been different. It's just that I don't know anybody else who would be able to tell me the truth, so my mom's word is all that I have to go on right now. Anyway, since a lot of you have been asking about what exactly went on with my mom, dad, and her sister, and her ex, this is basically the gist of whatever she told me. Update 1. Hi, thanks for the comments and stuff. I really needed to hear that because I had been feeling very guilty about whatever was going on with my mom, but now I don't. Not so much. It's been a week since the baby shower and my sister is still not speaking to anyone from the family, but they only have themselves to blame for that. My parents are both upset with me, but mostly my mom because a couple of days ago my dad finally sent over the divorce papers. He's been living separately ever since they fought at the baby shower, and until recently I hadn't blocked my mother, so she had kept messaging me and telling me that she blames me for everything, that I had ruined her life. I don't know what she was expecting me to do. It's not like I can take back everything that I had said at the baby shower, and all of a sudden people would start pretending like everything was normal. Blaming me was only a waste of time for her, but I guess she just needed a place to vent, so she kept accusing me of ruining everything for her. Anyway, I had been feeling bad and a little confused, so I hadn't been able to block her. But then after reading the comments here and after speaking to everybody who loves me, I realized I was doing the right thing. I had no reason to keep her secrets, especially when she never stood up for me. So she could be as mad as she wanted to. It hardly makes a difference to me anymore. I'm done covering up for her, and I don't care what happens with the family anymore. I don't have anything to do with them. They have never supported me in anything, and I'm just done. From now on, I'm just going to keep focusing on my family, my husband, and my son, and that's it. Update 2. So it's been 2 weeks since the baby shower and my dad finally reached out to me today. Up until recently he hadn't spoken to me directly, but I knew that he was also blaming me for everything that was going wrong thanks to a bunch of his relatives who had texted me to let me know that they had felt very disappointed by my behavior, and they didn't think that I was the kind of person who would cover up for my mom, especially regarding something so serious. So I knew that he had been bad-mouthing me as well, even though he hadn't exactly come out and said it to me directly like my mom had. That's why when he reached out to me I had literally no interest in speaking to him, but he just kept calling me from other numbers when I blocked his number, and after a while I was forced to pick up the call since I knew that he was not going to let this go. When I answered, he told me that after everything that I had done, the least I could do was answer his phone calls and be civil to him. He said that he did not expect an apology from me because after all I was my mom's daughter, but he still expected me to allow him to see his grandson, and under ordinary circumstances I might have even agreed with him just for the sake of it. But his tone was so nasty that it instantly told him that I was not going to let my son see anybody from this family because pretty much everyone was just spineless and stupid. For so long they had never liked me, and now they expected me to be the perfect daughter for them. No chance of that happening, and I told him that I did not want anything to do with him anymore. Before he had the chance to argue with me, I just hung up the phone quickly, but when I got home, I saw that my dad was out there waiting for me. I had picked up my son from my mother-in-law's place and she is the one who takes care of him while my husband and I are away at work. So since my son was with me, I did not want to get into any dramatic situation or worse, a fight with my dad, because my son obviously has no idea about all of the drama going on behind his back. He still loves his grandparents and he was very happy to see his grandpa after a long time. He literally ran towards him and my dad picked him up and they played for a while we were standing outside my house since I had no idea what to do. It was a pretty awkward situation because I myself had no interest in speaking to my father or interacting with him in any way whatsoever, but it was clear that my son did not feel the same way. Anyway, after a couple of minutes I unlocked the doors to the house and asked my son to go in and freshen up just so that I would have an excuse to speak to my dad in private. After my son left, I told my dad that my son was playing nice because he was just a child and had no idea what was going on with the family, but I'm not a child anymore, and everybody in the family has really hurt me, so right now I don't want to interact with anyone, and I asked him to leave. He got really annoyed and told me that this behavior did not make any sense to him, because as far as he's concerned, he was the man who had been betrayed the most, not only by his life but also by me, so the least I could do was at least pretend to be apologetic, even if I didn't feel that way in real life. But the way I was acting like I had nothing to be sorry about it was making him question whether he and my mother had raised me correctly at all. I told him very clearly that if he felt betrayed, that's how I had been feeling for the past many years. So my behavior right now was just a culmination of those feelings, and if he didn't approve of that, tough, because I had learned to behave this way from my parents. All throughout the past couple of years they had very expertly turned a blind eye to Melissa, constantly humiliating me every chance she got, and nobody had the audacity to say anything to her. But now, all of a sudden, just because I've spilled a few secrets of the family, I'm the villain? Mind you, this is a family that has never cared for me much, so why exactly am I supposed to care about them? Obviously my dad did not have an answer to these questions. He was stumped, and I just went on speaking. I explained to him exactly how upset I had been when Melissa had made that comment about my son at the baby shower, calling him a mistake. And even then, nobody had stood up for me or my son. So right now the whole act that he was putting up with, really loving his grandson, I told him to just save it for somebody who would believe in it. I didn't doubt that my parents loved my son. Everyone did, because he's just a kid and it's easy to love him. But at the end of today, I knew that the golden child's grandson would probably mean more to them than my son would after he was born. Besides, if the father could not even bring himself to defend or just speak up and say something, at least when his dear grandson was being referred to as a mistake, then I don't think he had any business overstepping my boundaries and coming to visit his grandson when I had made it very clear that I did not approve of it right now. That's all that I had to say, and he didn't seem to have anything to say in response or in defense, so I just walked to the door and shut it. I thought that he might try to come inside and meet my son again, but he didn't, and a couple of minutes later when I looked through the window, he was gone. Later on, when my husband came back home, I told him everything about my interaction with my dad, and he told me that this had been a long time coming. My parents really love to pretend like they have been hurt in the situation, but in reality, I'm the one who has been hurt day after day, and they have never cared about it. So this whole expectation from me that I should always be a good daughter and put my family before myself every single time had been drilled into my head subconsciously, but I'm breaking out of it now. I've already dealt with my father and made it clear to him that I'm not interested in speaking to him anymore, and if my mom contacts me again, she'll be hearing the same. Though for now I think she's keeping her distance from me, probably because she's busy with divorce and everything at the moment. Update 3. It has been close to 1 month since I last spoke to anybody from my family, and that was my dad. I kind of told him off in my last update, and since then, he has had the good sense to stay away from me. Melissa and I have obviously had no contact since the day of the baby shower, and I don't think any of us are worse off for it. After I had blocked my mom, she kept her distance from me as well, but then a couple of days ago I started receiving messages from some anonymous accounts on Facebook, and all of them were really hateful ones, telling me that I'm a horrible human being, absolutely worthless and stuff like that. Initially it was a bit off-putting and I thought it was somebody playing a prank on me, but I know that none of my friends have such a terrible sense of humor. At first it did not even occur to me that it might have been my mom, because it seemed like a really far-fetched possibility, but right now I don't think that it's so far-fetched because last night, my husband told me that he had been receiving messages like that all day from the same accounts. The catch is that he hadn't been receiving those same messages. Nobody was insulting him, but basically he was being told terrible things about me. In fact, my mom had even taken it up a notch and had been telling my husband that I'm a cheater, I sleep around and whatnot. Obviously, none of it is true. She was just saying it to get under our skin, but as soon as we figured out that it might have been my mom, we just started thinking of the whole thing as something really pathetic. And it makes me feel ashamed that I'm even associated with this woman. This is my mom that we're talking about. She is in her 50 seconds for crying out loud, and this is not the kind of thing that she should be getting up to right now. And for what? Just because she hates me for spilling her secrets? It's just sad and pathetic, and it really goes to show that I didn't do anything wrong by telling everybody her reality. I don't even understand what she hopes to get from this. She's just being hateful for no reason, and this is a waste of her time and energy. If we want to, we can report her and put an end to this, but honestly, that will be a waste of our time and energy because we really don't care. This reflects badly on her. It has nothing to do with us. I can tell that she has taken everything that has been happening really hard because this is some juvenile crap that she's pulling off. And I wish I could say I was upset with her or angry about this, but I just feel bad for her, because I can't believe that this is what my mom has been reduced to right now. Update 4. So it's been a couple of months since my last update, and today I heard from an aunt of mine that my parents finalized their divorce last week. I was attending an engagement party, and this was one of the first family events that I had attended ever since the baby shower. So I was kind of skeptical about going because I thought I might see my parents there, or worse, I might see Melissa, but I had to attend. I couldn't just skip it like every other event for the past couple of months because it's my cousin who got engaged, and she and I are kind of close. So she insisted that I come by and I agreed to drop in. But when my aunt told me that neither of my parents were attending, and Melissa had already declined the invitation, I stayed for longer, and she ended up telling me a lot of things about my family. I've not been in touch with them for a very long time, so I had no idea that the divorce had already been finalized. I feel kind of bad for them, but well, I knew this was coming after my last update where my mom had been sending me and my husband anonymous messages on Facebook to get on our nerves. We just ignored her for a couple of weeks, and she stopped on her own. My dad did try to get in touch with me a couple of times telling me that he really wanted to see his grandson, but I did not reply. I didn't have anything to say to these people anymore, so I've just completely cut them out of my life. My aunt told me that she hasn't spoken to my mom in a very long time, and since she's from my dad's side of the family, she doesn't really know what she has been up to, but she knows that my dad really misses me, and even more than me, he misses his grandson. I felt kind of bad about that, so I feel like I might let him come and see my son in a couple of days, not because I want to fix things